Hello and welcome to the third tutorial using Java graphics. Now today we're going to focus on the paddle class and making basically both players using a paddle. So over here I have the pseudocode sort of stuff, the comments of what a paddle contains. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some private variables to initialize these positions because those positions won't change throughout. Like the starting position is just a starting position. It's not going to be changing through each run of the game. At least we don't want it to. So we're going to go ahead private final int, and the final means that like you can't change the value. Whatever value you give it when you initialize it, that's what it is. Cannot be changed. And it's usually all capitals, so I'm going to go start x because we have a starting x position. Start y. We have a starting y position, start width, and a start height. Okay, so we need to initialize these. Height. Come on. Okay, so we need to initialize these here. That's why it's giving us an error. So let's just say for now we want it to be 50 for the start x. Start y, we want to be 150. Start width, we want to be 25. These numbers can be whatever you really want to make them. I'm just doing this myself. Start height, see 75 equals 75. Okay, so these are the two x and y coordinates for the paddle, the standard width and the standard height. Now these are going to be for the first paddle on the leftmost side, so let's start with that because we can't have the same x and y position for the right hand side paddle too. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to have another constructor, and whenever this other constructor is called, that's going to be the position of the second player. So when we initialize stuff, this is going to be the first player. So I'll put that here, player 1. And now this other one I'm going to be called public paddle because it's another constructor. This one's going to be player 2. Now it's giving an error because they're both the same thing. So this one's going to take in a parameter. It's going to take in a boolean multiplayer. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to do two things for us. So it's going to first say that's the second player, and it's going to have a boolean if it's multiplayer. So we can have the user decide at first if they want to verse someone else, using the WS keys and the up and down arrows, two people at one computer, or you can have one person playing a computer player that has some kind of AI intelligence. So yeah, so we can do that easily by doing this. So now let's initialize both of these. So the X position up here, so a paddle now basically it's going to have its own private set of variables that can change. Private int, so let's start with the integers. So it's basically going to have a real x, y, and y position that can change, and if we want to add power-ups, the width can change, and so can the height. That's all we'll worry about for now. And then let's see what else a paddle can have. A private boolean multiplayer, and this is basically going to hold the information from this one if it's multiplayer or not, so we can actually use this parameter. We might need this. I'm not sure if we do yet. We'll have it just in case though, and we'll change it accordingly if we don't. So then there's also, we probably also need an ID number. So that's just going to be a string. So what that's going to do is basically there's going to be some parts in this code, since this is where we kind of have to tell whether it's player 1 or player 2. So we can initialize an ID. So we can set this to a string saying like it's player 1 or this is player 2. So that we can use that, say like if player 1 only gets a power up for certain things or something, then we could check what ID we're using for whatever object we have, whether it's player 1 or player 2, and we can use that accordingly. So then we also need a color. Just going to call it color. That's going to be the color that we choose for the paddle. We have to import that because player 1 and player 2 are going to have different kind of colors. So now we can start initializing it. So x, starting x equals x. Hold on. X start should be start x. Wow. Start x, and then same thing with the y position. Y. And then the height, so height equals start height, there we go. And then the same thing with the width, equals start width. And then the color will equal whatever we want the color to be for player 1. So we could just say it's color dot blue. We'll make it blue. And then the Boolean multiplayer here, it's going to be false because it's player 1, so he's not going to be a computer player. He's always going to be a actual person. Not sure if we'll need this again, so I'll just put comments here. I'll just put that there. That just tells me that we might need this, just to be safe. And then we also need to set the ID to, let's just call it 1. Hold on. 1. Okay. So this is basically initializing all of the variables that we set here, and using the start y and start x width and height that we initialize up here. So now we're basically going to do the same thing with the second one. So we can just copy and paste this, but now we're just going to change it accordingly. So the y position, if you think about it, if we run this real quick, hopefully no errors. Okay, so the first paddle for player 1 is going to be over here, and the second paddle is going to be over here. Now their height and width are going to be the same, and so is their y position. If you think about it, when they start out, we want them to start at the same y position. So the only thing that's really going to change is their color and their x position. And if the multiplier equals whatever that is, and the ID number. So we can start by doing that. So let's say, because we have 500 pixels to go by, so I think 375 would make it even. 375, so that's going to start at 375 pixels over to the right. And then over here, can set the color to red. Make it kind of the opposite over here, just to see. You can make it whatever you want though. And then multiplayer is going to be multiplayer. But now, since we're working with two objects, like it's saying what multiplayer do we work with, so we have to put this dot multiplayer. And what this dot does is basically says, okay, I'm not working with this one. What is this object that I'm working with? I'm working with the paddle, so I'm going to use this multiplayer first. So it's saying that this multiplayer right here, as you can see it's highlighted there, is going to be the value of this multiplayer. It's kind of confusing to think about, but it's basically taking the parameter and saying equal to the global, uh, you know, class multiplayer. You can name this whatever you want. This is just the way I like to do it. If it's confusing, you can name this whatever you want. Name it multi. Works the same. So then the ID is also going to be 2, because this is player 2, or the computer player. So now that we have those initialized, we can, you know, we have set X and set Y, we have everything initialized. So now we can start by, let's see, we can do the draw method so we can actually get something on screen real quick. Public void draw. And I'll explain how this works after. It's going to take in a graphics G, import that. And now what this is going to do is over in our render class, how we had, where is it, paint component. So when we paint the component, we're basically going to have to call every other class's draw method. So that's why I made a draw method in the paddle class. So now we can say, okay, so what do we name our object for paddle here? Oh yeah, we didn't make one yet. Okay, so that's one thing we have to do is initialize all the classes we're going to make. So we could do that now. So after we, before we start our timer actually, we can create a new, let's actually go up here. So we're going to initialize stuff up here first. So private paddle player 1, player 1, player 2. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating 2 paddle classes because one paddle is going to be player 1 and the other paddle is going to be player 2. So over here now I can say paddle or player 1 equals new paddle. Now remember, player 1 takes the parameter with no, well, with no parameters, the paddle with no parameters. And then player 2 equals new paddle, and let's put true in there. So it's gonna say that it is a player 2, and we're gonna change this to ask if they want to be player 2 for now, but for creating the actual core game, we're just gonna say that it's statically true. So I'm just gonna put 2 comment marks basically, so we can tell that later on we're gonna have to change something with that. So now that we have 2 paddles on there in our draw method or our paint component, we can call player 1 dot draw. That's the method I just made, and it's going to take in the G object from here since it's the same thing. It's another graphics object, and then same thing with player 2 dot draw. Okay, so now we have, so it's going to start painting whatever we have in these draw methods. So all we did here was we made 2 paddles, player 1 and player 2, initialize player 1, initialize player 2, and now we need to actually go ahead and say what to draw. So this is where all the logic goes into drawing it basically. So let's think about how we're going to draw this. Now there's some methods that the draw method has already that we can use. So the first thing that we need to do is, because G is our graphics object obviously, so G can be a color, so let's set G dot set color to our color object in this thing. So basically what this is doing, it's taking whatever we set the color here. So if it's player 1, color equals blue, so player 1 is going to set the color to blue and draw in blue. And for player 2, the color is set to red, so it's going to set the color to red for player 2. That's all it's doing. And now we can basically just draw a rectangle, because our paddle is basically just a rectangle. So there's actually a method in here called g.fill rect, and now it's going to take in an x and y. It automatically filled these out, but it's going to take in an x and y width and a height. So what do you think we're going to put in there? We're just going to put in not the final integers, but we want the current x, current y, current width, and the current height. So now that's going to fill whatever these variables are equal to at the time to wherever this is located. So let's see if this actually works. And yep, okay, as you can see, player 1 is over here now, player 2 is over here, and they're actually spaced out really good. Exactly. So that is it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and in the next one we are going to go into the ball class and see how that works. See you guys.